Hello, everyone. Good to see so many people joining us today. Do us a favor, since we can only see each other, we can't see you. Pop a note in the chat just to let us know where you're from. Love to know where people are listening in, watching in from. So give us, first one, I think one of the first ones I saw was from Ohio. Woohoo! All right, Michigan. Awesome. All right, let us know. Keep that rolling. And we're going to go ahead and kind of jump into our topic. We do these meetings every month, and it's always exciting for us as coaches because it's a way just to get to reach out to more of you than we often get to reach. So it's really exciting for us. And we're going to choose a topic and focus on a little bit. And then later, we're going to have some people connect with us as well. So, the theme for September at TFM is about resetting, recommitting, kind of, looking at what you're doing and recommitting to it and refining what you're doing. So, Heather, Amy, and I are all going to chime in about this. So, Amy, I wondered if you could get us started today of what does this kind of reset and refine, recommit mean for you?
Yeah, well, hello everyone. And I had read Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project years ago and kind of followed her. And I remember her saying for her, September is the new January. And I really attached onto that years ago. And I love that idea. I think it arguably is maybe even better than January. So anyone out there in New Hampshire listening, well, I live in New Hampshire, and in January it is cold and gray. And I think that New Year's often has sort of this restrictive feeling, but September is for me is really full of abundance and possibility. I was just visiting the farmers market this morning. It's harvest season. The farmers market is overflowed with fresh produce, and there's just this natural, I think, spirit of renewal in the air, especially if you have kids that are kind of going back to school. I think we all kind of carry that ingrained back to school mindset. Fresh notebooks, sharpened pencils. It's really that sense of new beginnings. And also the weather is just so conducive. In at least for me, the weather is perfect right now. Cool mornings, warm afternoons, crisp evenings. And it just is a beautiful time to move in nature, to breathe deeply, to let fresh air and sunshine calm our nervous systems, and eat all of that wonderful produce. So I feel like this is a perfect time to renew. And I really encourage folks to think about what really reflect. So I think reflection helps us recommit with clarity rather than guilt. So reflect on your summer. What's worked well for you these past months? Where did you feel proud? As we do at the fasting method, we're always celebrating our non-scale victories. So what were your non-scale victories this summer? Where did you feel energized or at kind of peace with your choices? What felt harder or left you feeling off track? And really think about the summer and what you want to do um, with this fresh start that we're given in September.
I love that. I love the focus on reflecting and not focusing on guilt or shame of, oh, I've got to now make up for the summer, but what did I learn this summer? What supports me and what gets in the way? I actually had a group meeting yesterday and our topic was habit audit, looking at what helps and what hinders. So I love that, Amy. That's awesome. Good. How about you, Heather?
Well, first of all, Amy just like painted the most beautiful picture. Like if you're listening, if you're not feeling like, a certain kind of way, I don't know what's wrong with you because, I knew what she was, kind of in general, kind of what her thoughts were on this matter. And she just really kind of put me there in that place of, that fresh start and new beginning, which I love. I think so many of us, I focus on weight loss, so that's usually what I talk about. And so many of us, really kind of can get bogged down in, choices that we've made and feel overwhelmed by decisions that led us someplace where we don't want to be. And so we can always use that concept of a fresh start, that there is there's a new opportunity to make new choices, and the seasons are a beautiful time to have that reflection, right? Like there's the whole world is changing, and we can too. And when I think about like the concept of fresh starts and kind of recommitting to our goals, then I'm thinking about the goals. I often like to say that your dreams will never come true if you don't have any. I think sometimes we have this vague sense that we want to be healthier and thinner, but it's like, what does that really look like to you? What does that mean? How are you going to move through the body if you change your behavior and you get yourself to the level of health that you're striving for? Right? Really kind of sit with that so that you recognize, like, hey, this is what I'm fighting for. I was talking in a community meeting moments ago, actually, about motivation and how, sometimes we feel like it just leaves us. It's like, where'd it go? Who took it? No, it didn't. It didn't. It's right there. You haven't been focusing on it. You haven't been remembering what you're fighting for. So it's a really good, kind of practice that I teach and that I would encourage is to, first of all, coming up with those goals and having a really clear picture of them, but really kind of engaging with them on a regular basis. I start my mornings and I encourage my clients to do the same with what is it that I want? What am I trying to accomplish? Not just my health goals, but my whole life. I'm thinking about what is it that this girl Heather in this one life she has to live is trying to do. And I think about my goals and I think about what it's going to take for me to move myself toward them in some way. And that regular commitment makes it so that my motivation stays right there front and center because I know what I'm fighting for on a regular basis.
I love that. And it sets me up for the thing that I wanted to focus on, because I think once we know what our goals are, once we know what we're working, what are we going to make today the best day with as far as taking care of our body and things? I think the next step that we all have to focus on are what are our systems? And I am a former middle school teacher. And I know that the beginning of the year for me as a teacher and for my middle school students at the time was all about setting up systems. How are you going to find your locker? How are you going to carry which books to which class? When are you going to do your homework? When are you going to go to soccer practice? How are you going to get this done? Are you going to be ready for the first dance of the fall and things? So everything was about systems. By April, we're like, oh, I just want to get through. But September was such a good time to really get your systems in place. And I can really tell you as a teacher, the students who struggled more setting up the systems struggled more throughout the year. And they needed more support to get those systems really developed and to kind of get into them so that they could carry them then through. And I think about that with TFM, with all of our health and weight loss goals. We need systems. Knowing what you want is really important. How are you going to get there? What's going to carry you there? Is creating the systems that work. And as Amy said, reflecting on what systems did I have in place over these past few months that helped me? And what systems did I have or didn't I have that got in the way for me and slowed my progress or made me not feel as well? So for me, September is a really good time to focus on the systems, creating the things that you're going to do, set up your day, set up your plans, set up your calendar. How are you going to celebrate the things that you're achieving? How will you measure things? Some people like to measure a whole bunch of biomarkers. They have spreadsheets for the past 10 years. Other people are like, oh man, if you ever make me track anything, I am out of here. How are you going to keep track of things? I have a pair of pants right now. They are my aspirational pants. that's how I'm going to track. I'm not someone who hops on the scale, but I am someone who knows if my body is changing in one direction or the other. So, what systems are you going to use to me as a great place to focus in September while you're eating all of that gorgeous fall harvest and everything that Amy mentioned? Very good. All right. I see someone who is an English professor and also um, highlighted that setting up the systems was really important. I wonder for you, Amy, if there's any particular thing that you come across with your clients or in community meetings or through your own experience that really helps people in this time of what should I be doing right now? I came off of summer. What do I do next? Especially because for some people, depending on where you live, depending on spiritual beliefs or holidays that you celebrate, you're coming upon holidays for some people this month, for some people coming up in a couple of months. So, what do you notice at this time that people really need some support around?
Well, I ask my clients, what's one thing, one practice, one system that I can tighten up right now? I think sometimes it can feel very overwhelming if you're thinking, you need this whole lifestyle overhaul. I say don't September, think of it as a time for refinement. So, what one practice can you refine? Is that um, your hydration, your sleep routines, your mindful eating, your movement outdoors? This is such a great time for walks and hikes and yard work. Both movement that helps our body with glucose regulation, but also nervous system support. Using the natural rhythm of the shorter days to kind of align with your circadian cycle with earlier dinners and earlier to bedtime for better sleep. So I think that's the what I would ask folks that are listening. What is one practice that you can tighten up right now?
Oh, Terry, can I talk on that as well?
Yeah,
I
okay.
am so behind what Amy just said, 1000%, and that, kind of concept of not having a complete overhaul. Because that's where I see so many people getting tripped up, right? When I'm talking to people about the, kind of the four big habits of weight loss, movement, mindset, food, and fasting, sometimes people are like, okay, so I got to get each one of those to a dialed to a 10 as quickly as possible. And that is just a recipe for burnout, because, we are living a whole life outside of our, kind of our healthy lifestyle change, and weight loss, et cetera. And, to add on all, kind of full throttle, all of those different things, all of those habits, all of those new systems all at once, it just overloads the system. It's too much. And so if we're already dealing with back to school and the 8,000 emails for my parents out there, my fellow parents, for all the sports and the back to school nights and the paperwork and, the fundraisers, et cetera. So we've got all of that happening and we've got, our own work life happening and our own relationships and our own kind of, plans and vacations coming up. And we're going to try and add, eight different, systems or habits to, our healthy lifestyle change too much. And so I love what you said, Amy, about, it's like, okay, what's one, let's just, ooh, hey, I've got the bandwidth to add maybe one more thing to my pile of things. What is the thing that I either want to do the most or if, or that has the highest leverage? I'm always like, let's, kind of, if nothing else, maybe let's get a walk in, like get some time in nature because that helps on a multitude of things. But if you're already doing that and you have room for one more thing, maybe it's tightening up the diet, like you said, like, find the thing that makes the most sense for you. But maybe don't find 10 things, find one thing. So I love that, and I wanted to just highlight and emphasize that.
I think that's really important. Again, we're touching on a lot of things that recently came up in large community meetings at TFM that I've been working on with people. And someone said, well, if I'm going to refine my systems, if I'm going to figure out what to do, where should I start? I have so many things that I think would be important for me. And as soon as they even start to say that, they start to feel overwhelmed because, like you said, there's just not much more space in life to add 42 more things. So choosing something, I always encourage people one of two things, and you kind of touched on this, Heather. One, pick the easiest thing. For some people, it's like, great, pick the thing that you can experience some success with quickly. You know, so for me, that might be something like hydration. Hydration is actually going to make a difference in everything I do, but for me, it's an easier sell to my brain. What? We just have to drink water consistently? Okay, I'll work on that. It's not the hardest one for me. Other people might find hydration harder, but for me, that's like a great starting point. And some people might say, I know, but hydration is not going to fix the 75 pounds I want to lose, Terri. No, but it's going to prime the pump. It's going to get things working well, and it's going to get you into creating systems and habits that work. And then the other option, besides maybe the easier one for you, is the one that you think will have the most impact. Like Heather said, well, what can you leverage? So I might say, I'm going to work on my sleep. And again, someone might say, Terri, that doesn't have anything to do with losing 75 pounds. It does. It has a lot to do with, cravings, with metabolic function, with my attitude, with my mood, all of those things that lead me to struggle more with fasting, struggle more with what foods I eat. And so that one might be the one I focus on first because I understand it's going to impact lots of the things that I'm wanting. So either pick one that you know you can start making some momentum on right away, or choose one that you feel like has the potential to impact numerous areas of your life. Okay.
Yep.
All right. It's so funny to me because the three of us couldn't be more different from each other, but we're all like nodding, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes,
Right.
exactly. Even though we all approach things from kind of different angles and things with our clients in our own life in general. So I was trying to kind of watch over in the chat as well. Um, Something I want to mention before we start digging into any questions or things that you all might have is what I've been seeing so far that some people have been writing in the chat and some people have started to put things in the Q&A box is I think this is a really important time to be thinking about not only the systems and, reflecting on what you've been learning, support. How will you gain support for doing these things? Do you have people in your life, friends, colleagues, family, that can be part of your support? Do you need to come here with us so we can be part of your support? Are you a member at TFM and come to meetings regularly and post in the forum? What kind of support helps you? And we're not all the same. I don't like to fast with other people. We have like, oh, let's all do this fast. I don't like to do that. That doesn't work well for me. Other people, that's super supportive for them and really helps them dig into it. So, this is an important time of year, too, I think, for all of us to be looking at how do I get the support that I need to put in place these systems and the consistency and doing hard things. It requires support. So, how will you get support? Anything, Amy? I know, Heather, you could talk about that for days, but anything from either of you about that getting support for this journey?
Well, I can tell you that being in a community of like-minded people who are there to support you. There's this beautiful analogy that one of our members had shared when somebody had talked about falling off the wagon. I think we all have had that experience where we felt like we've fallen off the wagon at one point or another. And by being at TFM, she realized that she no longer, while she may not be seated in the wagon, she still has her hand, walking alongside the wagon. Coming to the community meetings are just so powerful. Tuning into the podcasts and things like Coach's Corner. Um, and when she's ready, she will scramble back up onto that seat of the wagon. And I loved when she shared this in one of the community meetings. The members were posting in chat like, "We're here to help shove you back up on the wagon." And it's so true. We the community meetings, the forums, the members really support one another. So if you feel alone in this journey, coming to TFM for and being part of the community, whether it's coaching or group meetings or being part of a workshop, that community is I think so integral to success on your health journey.
Yeah, I love that idea, Amy, of even when you don't feel like you're fully in, having your hand still kind of on the pulse of it. You don't get too far away. You don't hop off the wagon and run 3 miles away from it. That person was right there, still connected to it, even when they were struggling to do it more fully. It's great.
And Terry's right. I could absolutely talk on this topic nonstop. I'm not going to. I'm gonna bridge Terry, right? Shots fired. But I have to, at least give a very small synopsis of my story because I truly think that it just exemplifies why I am here as a coach. I, like many probably on this call, thought, what do I need help for? I already know all things. I know how to fast, I know how to eat, da 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 da. And I tried to do fasting on my own for 2 years, and I did have some success. I lost about 25 pounds on my own, and then it started to come back. And I was like, oh my God, I had finally found the thing that worked. But like so many people that come to me for coaching intake say, it's like, I know what I need to do. I can't make myself to keep doing it. I can't stay consistent long enough. I need accountability. And that it just resonates. It's exactly how I felt. And I'm sure I probably said something very similar when I, had my intake with Terri. Like I know what to do. I'm not doing it. Help me make me do it. Right. And so for me, the act of joining the community and hiring a coach, investing in coaching made the absolute difference to me, right? That I lost 55 pounds in 6 months, which is not a guarantee for anyone, listening, but, because I had all of the pieces in place except consistency, once I had a system, once I had support on how to, keep my consistency going, that's what I needed, right? I just took off with what I already knew how to do. And it was so life-changing for me that I was like, gosh, I want to be that person. I want to be Terri for somebody else, and help other people. And I am. And now I'm watching my own like little flock of birds, my little ducklings, come to me and, with the same exact struggles. Gosh, I know what to do. You don't need to teach me. I could probably teach you. I just need somebody to hold me accountable. And then I do. And then they reach their goals. Not all of them. Some people are still walking along the wagon. But it's an amazing thing how much difference the support is, and I will die on that hill. That's why I'm here.
Probably why we're all here. We really believe in the power of support. We needed it. I was fortunate. I got to work with Megan for a little period of time as a coach, and it was actually before we had this community. We didn't have large meetings. The Facebook group was really small. There was not much of, there wasn't anywhere else to get this support. And so we have really built this huge system of support. And I've been watching in the chat people talking about like, hey, I'm in that city too. We should get together. We should go for a walk. We should, fast together or something. And that's one of the beauties of a community, as Amy mentioned, that we have that. And even though we're all doing it differently, we're all at different places, we all have different medical things influencing how we do this, or different lifestyle things that we need to navigate. There is something so powerful about knowing people get it at some level. Last week, it was already just last week, I hosted a retreat with 5 members. And we were up in the mountains, and it was the most, I can't even explain it, but it was so powerful. Regardless of what we were doing, we just knew, no matter how different we all were, that at some level we had a shared knowledge base and experience. So, like, while we were eating meals, it was not a fasting retreat, we were eating meals, we were talking about our families and how we navigate things with our families. It was like the TFM related talk never stopped, because it felt so good to be with people who just got it at some level. And so I invite any of you who haven't experienced that with us, try it out. Come see. We do a 3-month course, and right now, if you want to get in, you're right in the time of it. It is more self-directed. We give you all the information, but then we, expect that you're going to come to some meetings and learn these things and reinforce these things. But people learn a great deal in that. And it just really requires that you join for the 3 months, and then you can make an evaluation. Is this continuing to give me the support? Do I want to stay in this community? Did I get what I needed? And I don't want to stay in this community, but that happens. And right now, this week is kind of the last time to get in on the one that starts in September. It's called our Jumpstart program. And as Heather and Amy both have mentioned, there are other ways to be connected with us. We do workshops, we have master classes. Currently, Heather is doing a 6-month program that people are weekly meeting with Heather, a group of people. I have one coming up, a 3-month program on mindset and behavioral things. So we offer different types of programming if you're interested. Small group coaching, one-on-one coaching, and some of these other programs. So lots of opportunities, and just being a part of the community for many people is their base, and that's what they focus on. All right. This is usually the time that people get all fired up in here. And I want to say that unfortunately, we cannot answer every question. And usually what I try to do, and Amy and Heather will try to do, is kind of answer things broadly enough to help a lot of people. But if we get really, nitpicky on the little detail, like how many grams of protein should you have, we're missing the rest of us who are all here. So we're going to answer things a little more generally. So if you do have some questions that you want to ask us, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. That's where we'll look, because the chat gets pretty full and it's hard for us to find them there. So one person asked about excessive protein turning into glucose. And for some people, this is a fear. They follow a lot of low carb, keto, information. And the concern is that if I eat too much protein, but dang, TFM tells me I need to make sure I eat enough protein, how do I know how much is enough and what's too much? I'm just going to answer one part of this pretty generally. Very rarely have I had clients or people at TFM that are over consuming protein. Now, I have some people who need a lot of protein. I had one client who was a competitive weightlifter. That woman needed to eat a lot more protein than I needed to eat. Now, I'm someone who has struggled with type 2 diabetes. So is it going to be good for me just to load up on hundreds and hundreds of grams of protein? No, that's excessive for my body. But very, very rarely have I ever run into, you should have eaten 5 grams less because now you have too much glucose. I'm going to say a problematic food. I didn't caution at the beginning of not saying foods, but sometimes people make it sound like if I eat a little more steak, it's the same thing as eating chocolate cake. And it is not. It is not the same thing. There is a point where you can overconsume protein. And that's not going to help either. But we talk a lot about just prioritizing protein. I actually see more error on the side of not getting enough protein because of old diet mentality and diet culture. So I very rarely run into anyone who has to be so minutely careful about the number of grams of protein. So that's my kind of response on that one. And Amy or Heather, if you need to add anything.
Well, I would say in general, I think the issue for many of my clients is less about protein as a very specific macronutrient and more about too much energy in general.
Hmm.
So I will see people try to pregame a fast. It's like I gotta eat a whole lot because I'm not gonna eat for the next 24 to 42 hours, whatever. So I gotta, kind of stock up. And that's not
Hmm.
what we're trying to do. We're trying to use body fat, right? So we don't want to stock up because then we're just going to be using that. And the fast is really just going to, kind of dig into what you just ate. So it's not really going to help you. And then I see it happen on the flip side. People post game fasts where they are like, well, I just didn't eat for the last 42, 48 hours. So I need to, get my storage up, right? Like, that's not the point, right? The point of fasting is to use up what we already got, not to, put more in or to put it back, like you said, underdoing protein is something that I see more commonly when people, kind of look at their food diaries rather than overdoing it. Though I have seen some clients that have a quantity issue, and in general, they'll do their regular fasting, but they're not losing anything because they're just eating so much energy on their
Hmm.
eating days. Even if it's like, kind of low carb, healthy, whole foods, you can overdo it, right? If you're eating as much as you're fasting off, then you're not going to make a whole lot of progress. So I do see that happening, unfortunately. And then somebody asked about, oh, the four habits of weight loss. It's been, rolling past. It's movement, mindset, food, and fasting. MMFF, right? Those are the things that I teach, and I, try to make sure that as I'm working with clients to adjust their habits of lifestyle change, not all at once, but gradually. Probably the most important one, and I think Terry would agree, would be mindset. I think 90 to 99% of this thing is in the head. And so working on our mindset and kind of really wrapping ourselves around what we're trying to do is the most important thing. We can get in the weeds with things like, how many carbs or calories or protein and, what's the best fasting regimen. And what really needs to be addressed more than that is emotional eating, self-sabotage, right? A whole lot of things that, those kind of in the weeds things are easy to teach, more difficult to practice because of the mindset things.
Very good.
I saw a couple of questions in there about consistency, and maybe what was okay if I talk about some keys like to staying consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know who it was, had mentioned that they have despite having a really important why. And for those of you that don't like, what is a why? Well, I call it your big why. It's really, what your motivation is to get healthy and to, follow a fasting method lifestyle. And it has to, in my mind, has to be bigger than I want to lose 30 pounds. You have to really dig and ask yourself, why is it that you want to lose 30 pounds? Do you want more, mobility? Do you want to get down with your grandchildren on the floor? Do you want to travel more and have that energy to travel? Really, you need to have a vision that inspires you to move forward. So when your motivation dips, you can really call to mind that big why to keep you moving forward. And then I really think that consistency comes from stacking the small little wins. And so that's why I was kind of focusing on find one thing that you can refine, um, because it's those small wins and the consistency really compounds. So every small step, think of it as it's really building momentum for you. And then I think so many people try to kind of fit fasting into their lifestyle, and it doesn't often become sustainable. I think you need to think of fasting as more of a rhythm that flows with your life and not a rigid set of rules. So that's another way to kind of, I think, build consistency. And then I recommend to my clients really having some simple non-negotiables. For me, it's I do not snack between meals. And I close the kitchen after dinner. And those two non-negotiables have really helped me maintain consistency. I think it's important to plan ahead for disruptions. We have a lot of group meetings around travel and social events and holidays, and how to plan and be flexible around, again, it's building a rhythm for fasting in what is, real life. And there's often kind of a messy middle in life. And then using accountability, whether it's, finding a coach or an accountability partner, or using, tracking apps, journals, habit trackers, and then really share your wins with, a partner, somebody, in the TFM forum or community that can really help you with your commitment and consistency. So just those were some of my tips for, maintaining consistency.
Great. So I'm not going to go through this specific question, but I'm going to touch on something related to something someone asked that I think will help everyone, hopefully. The question is kind of like, I'm just starting out and I'm currently doing this number of hours of fast. Is this okay to get started? Yes. Anything that is doable is okay. And no one usually says, I'm starting out with 94 days of fasting. Is that okay? That's not my concern. Is it okay if I start with 8 hours? Yeah, because I remember when I couldn't do 2 or 3. So 8 was a step up. So for some of us, the first big stretch is even going from, let's say, a dinner time. So it's 6 or 7 at night to 6 or 7 in the morning. That's 12 hours. And for some of us, that is a big leap because we're used to snacking in the evening. So cutting out that snacking time, great first step. And sometimes people say, well, shouldn't I already be doing this fast? No, you need to do what stretches you in this moment. If I'm still feeling stretched doing 12 hours, so from dinner until breakfast, I shouldn't jump ahead of that until I can do this confidently and competently, and then I can stretch a little more. Then I go from dinner and maybe I skip breakfast and I go to lunch and I start practicing that. And there's no timeline. There's not, yes, you need to move every 2 weeks to the next step. Some people will move through steps a little more quickly based on life situations and health. And some of us are going to go more gradually. Coach Lisa shares in a podcast episode, I don't remember the exact timeline, but the first 3 or 4 months or more, she never did more than from dinner until the next day. And she only focused on what we call TRE, meaning eating only meals, time restricted eating. And she lost like her first 40 pounds doing that with no technical fasting. So please don't feel like you have to rush, that you have to hurry and get to some number of hours of fasting. Go from where you are and stretch. Get good there and stretch. Okay. So if you're starting with 12, bravo. If you've worked up to 16, great. What's next? 18? 2 meals? 1 meal? What's your next step? So please, give yourself that grace of going kind of step by step, one stretch at a time. Heather, you look like you are intently looking at questions and deciding where you're going to
I'm
go.
not good at that. Terry, you are so good at looking at chat and talking to people and paying attention at the same time. I am so if anybody, community members can vouch for me, I'm like, y'all, if you put it in the chat, I'm not going to see it because I'm trying to focus on things. Now, I have no idea what you just said because I was looking at some of my clients are like, Heather, and I'm like, ah. So, sorry. So it's just not my strong suit. I'm a terrible multitasker. All my kids know this. But I do know that you were talking about kind of gradually increasing. And I saw Pam, which is what I was just reading, who said that, like what I would completely 1000% agree on is looking at the food first. When it comes to fasting, so often because we're a fasting community and we hear all the benefits of fasting, we're like, we got to get the fast in as far as 5 days, right? And it's like, how soon can I get to overnights? Because I know that's where the magic is. But the food was what got us into trouble. The food is what's eventually going to lead us out of trouble and is what's going to keep us in a healthy place. So the food is always, in my opinion, the most important thing to be working on. I think that that's where everyone should start, right? If you were asking me, in my opinion, as a coach and as someone who, lost the weight and has kept it off for 3 years, my answer is work on that food. The fasting gets easier when you work on the food. Your ability to do, alternate day fasting and using the kind of turbocharged accelerant for weight loss that fasting is becomes just more accessible to you if you work on the food. So I 1000% agree with what Pam was saying, okay, so maybe 324s is something that you can get going, but the alternate day, maybe save that for after you really lock down the food, which is the problem to begin with that you're trying to solve.
Very good. I'm going to answer a technical question that has come up in a couple different ways. And that is, what about if I live in a time zone or if a meeting happens at a time that I'm at work or I'm picking my kids up at school? How can I participate or how can I benefit from the community or from a workshop or those kind of things? So our large community meetings are recorded. And they span kind of big chunk of time. They start in the US in the morning and they end late afternoon, sometimes early evening. So pretty big span. So if you live in the UK or you live in Australia, there are certain meetings that you can attend live. And there are certain meetings that unless you're going to be up at 3 a.m., you're not going to attend live, but they're recorded and you can watch them. Workshops, they're recorded as well. Heather's 6-month program, my 3-month program. If you're like, oh shoot, I'm not available on Thursday nights or I'm not available on Tuesday nights all the time, can I still do this? Yes, all of those sessions are recorded and you will have access to them. So definitely, we have to pick a time to do things, and generally we pick times that work for us in our work schedule. But they are recorded so that everyone can access them from the community. All right, so Amy, I'm gonna highlight you on this one, but any of us can talk about it too. But because you talked about having that big why, and this person said, sometimes despite having very important whys, goals, and support, they still struggle to be consistent either with their eating or their fasting. And they know that there's no magic bullet, but they're wondering if you can share any practices that help keep this person consistent and help with self-sabotage.
Yeah, well, those were some of the things that I had mentioned a little bit earlier about staying on track and being consistent. I think a big part is the mindset of progress, not perfection, that we talk a lot about here at the fasting method, that it really isn't about perfection. It's about staying engaged and keeping your hand on that wagon. Whether that means, going from like your extended fasting schedule to just really solid time restricted eating, no snacks, as kind of your way to stay engaged. Just knowing that falling off track, it's not failure. It's just part of that rhythm of life and that messy middle. And it's important to just, keep your hand on the wagon and step back in. with kind of your non-negotiables, like I talked about, having a couple habits that you just stick with no matter what. Whether that's just starting your day off with warm water and lemon and some salt. It kind of starts you off on the right track, hydrated and salted and ready to start the day. It's kind of like your lifeline, figuring out what your back on track strategy is, when to kind of hold onto that wagon again to sort of step back in. So I think, just in short, consistency, it's not about being perfect every day. It's about staying engaged and keep your big why front and center. A lot of folks will create like a little vision board that they look at every morning. Make sure that you're reflecting on it every morning and evening. And then just choose practices that are sustainable for you, that, kind of going back to what we were talking about in the beginning. It doesn't have to be an overhaul. Just go back to those things that really you feel like move the needle for you.
Very good. Very good.
Definitely a fan of counting the wins at the end of every day and recognizing that not all wins are, related to the scale, right? Some of the wins, actually the more important wins are the inputs, are the things that are indicating that you're showing up for yourself. You're showing up for your fast, you're showing up for your food or whatever. Anything that you're doing that is moving you toward health as opposed to away from it is a sign that you're winning. Like those are wins. Those inputs eventually move the scoreboard. I think also, people that do have everything lined up, they're like, I'm trying so hard, but this food has really got a hold of me. Then, kind of digging into your relationship with food. My coach, Terri, recommended Never Binge Again by Glenn Livingston. And, part of kind of the recommendation in that book is really setting up some boundaries for yourself when it comes to some of these foods. It can be really easy on a day-to-day basis, to just be like, well, it's a sometimes food and today's sometimes, like a Cookie Monster, right? Like it's always sometimes. And so when we really have these kind of big goals for ourselves and we recognize that if we engage with certain foods on a very consistent, like weekly basis, for example, we're probably not going to get to where we want to go. Then it's like, okay, well, if the dose makes the poison and we need to work on the quantity and the frequency that we have some of these things, especially if we're very insulin resistant, then we need to look at, well, maybe once a week is too much for some of these foods for me. Maybe that's more like a once a month or a once a quarter or even food. And so, kind of really, making that trade of, I really want to get healthier and I really want these foods too, but this doesn't come if these foods are every week. So I really need to be willing to make the trade to get the health by not engaging with these foods as frequently. And it really needs to be kind of what some people call like a bright line or, just basically it's a no.
Hmm. I think that's the other really important piece that we're all touching on in different ways is that, probably one of the hardest things in this journey is we're all trying to figure out what works for us. And right when you figure out what works for you, it changes. Just like those of you who are parents, right when you got your kids sleeping through the night, they got teeth and then everything changed again. Like we're going to keep evolving. And so continuing to explore and figure out what works for you, it's not the same thing that works for everyone else. This is why we can't just give exact cookie cutter, plans to everyone. But if you're in the community and you're saying, I just don't even know what kind of schedule, go into the quick guides and look at intermittent fasting protocols. And it explains if you're here working on this, here's an example. Someone else earlier mentioned they saw a chart like that. Yeah, I'm very visual. I love seeing those charts. That helps me see what the week looks like. People start talking number of hours, I kind of get lost. But if you show me the chart, it all makes sense to me. So please use those resources. That's an example of the resources we have at TFM. We have, handouts that show here, if you're, postmenopausal working on this, here's an example of a protocol that might be something for you to work toward. Here's one to start with to work toward that. But we're all here figuring out what works for us. And someone else, going back to the question that Amy answered about, I still struggle sometimes with the self-sabotage and things. I know I'm going to make this sound like it's easy, and I know it's not. I encourage everyone to do some reflecting and get real honest with yourself. Where are the times that I struggle? Some of you know there's a time of night when you struggle. There's a day of the week when you struggle more. There's events that happen at work that make you struggle more. And start identifying what goes on during those. Why do those make it more difficult? Even though I have a really good why, and even though I know what works for me, why do I go over here? Start identifying so that you can help kind of safeguard yourself from those. So let's say one of my triggers is when something difficult happens at work, which is going to happen, right? What do I do? What do I put in place so that when something difficult happens at work, I have a safety plan rather than my old resort of going back to problematic snacking or foods or whatever? Start to create those new systems of safety mechanisms for you, because the temptations, the going out with family on holidays, it's going to keep happening. How are you going to navigate it? And you are not weak or lazy or crazy or stupid because you struggle with these things. Those foods and those old food behaviors, they have been designed to trip us up. How can you help safeguard yourself? Learning. One of my favorite books on self-sabotage, she talked about you have to kind of think of that inner part of your brain. It's like if you were a boxer and you were going to get into the ring with another boxer, you would watch their fight tapes. You would see, when does this boxer do this and what do they follow up with? Because I'm not going to fall to that. I know what's coming. So I know, man, when I get an annoying email, this is my go-to behavior. Otherwise, I know I'm going to the cupboard or the refrigerator. So start identifying, what are the things that trip you up and what are your safeguards you can start to put into place. The book that Heather mentioned, I'm not sure if that's what someone's asking.
I think the book you just mentioned, the self-sabotage book.
Oh, yeah, great question. I think it's just called the Self-Sabotage Workbook. The author's name is Candice Setti, Seti, Candice Setti. And it's a workbook. Thank you. Yeah. Good catch there, Heather. All right, everyone, we are out of time. And I just first wanted to thank all of you for being here. And I really wanted to thank Amy and Heather. I love doing these things with you guys because you have, again, such different perspectives and things that I always come away from getting things reinforced, affirming things for me. So thank you, both of you, for doing this as well.
Thanks, Terri.
Good. All right, everyone, we will be back next month. Some combination of us will be back next month. Remember, if you are not a member of the community and you want to find out what this is all about, joining right now gets you into that Jumpstart program. And we kind of go from the beginning to get you going. So if you're questioning, how do I get started? What should I do first? We lay it all out for you. We kind of walk you through it. So love to see you there. All of us have meetings every week. We'd love to see you in those. So thank you for being here. Thank you very much for your comments and things. And we will look forward to seeing you again next month. Bye, everybody.
Make good choices.